Hello, welcome back to the YouTube channel of Bethel Evangelical Free Church Hanley. I'm Pastor Gervais Charnley, and this is the second Gloucestershire church in this particular day's odyssey, and in the continuing odyssey around English country churches. This is the Church of St Edward the Confessor, Kempley, and it was opened in 1903. There is a much older church of St Mary at Kempley, Norman in fact, which is redundant, and it's currently maintained by English Heritage. It's well away from where the village centre ended up being, which is here, and in the late 19th, early 20th centuries, this church is built. This is a product of the arts and crafts movement. The architect was Randall Wells, and what he has done here is use some of the language of Gothic to produce a building that is quite unique, very much of its time. There's basically two windows in the nave. Right, there's one window in the nave, one in the chancel. The light that is currently illuminating me comes through the west window, which is this enormous great thing. We'll see it, of course, in the tour. It was funded by the 7th Earl Betjeman, and he had his own idea. But he said to Randall Wells, look, build a church as you see fit, but you need to incorporate some sculptures in the exterior. And it's the arts and crafts movement. The arts and crafts movement is about retaining and continuing old-fashioned craftsmanship. And so it's built largely by local men. It's one of three interesting arts and crafts churches that can be found in Herefordshire, and in this case in Gloucestershire, and around the country. Now this is the church. This church, I say, St Edward's, is one where you've got the walls have been built by local men, the roof, local carpenters, the crucifix, the rood behind me. That's done actually by someone who trained as a maker of ship's figureheads. Of course, by 1903, the old figureheads are disappearing, the old arts and crafts are going, and this arts and crafts movement is an attempt to keep it up. Now, to a great extent, it fails. People want mass-produced material. People, more and more in the 20th century, want something that is cheap, rather than necessarily something that is an example of craftsmanship. And unfortunately, that has seen the decline of so much in the way of crafts in Britain, in terms of course, Stoke-on-Trent, the potteries, the industry there, and the idea that local people could build a church like this now is just, the skills don't exist in most villages. You have to get in specialists. But you still, at this point, you have the local carpenter, you had local stonemasons. These skills still just about existed, and so this is a monument, really, to, in some respects, to those skills, as well as being a still functioning Anglican parish church. It's not consecrated until the 1930s, but it's used from 1903 onwards. So let's have a look around and again see what we can see in this fascinating and very eccentric building. As usual, then, we start at the West End, and this is a building designed to be viewed from the West End and illuminated almost entirely from the West End. The vast majority of the light, the natural light that comes into the building, comes through the West End. There are modern spotlights and things in the ceiling. Originally it would have been, I suppose, oil lamps. 1903, you wouldn't have had mains electricity out here. Pews, again, are made by local carpenters. These are not stuff that's been bought in from a catalogue, and of course those catalogues existed. The font is a sort of semi-Norman style, typical arts and crafts type font, really, and very beautiful. And it's been made by a craftsman. It hasn't been produced in a big workshop. The rood, as I said, this is of course quite high Anglican, but the rood here is made by, and the figures are made by those who trained in making ships' figureheads back in the day, an art that was already dying out in 1903. Pulpit, although it looks 17th century, I believe is actually original for this building. It's an imitation. It may be original 17th century from somewhere else, but it's not from the old church because the old church still has its. No east window. Instead we have this canopy here with these twisted columns, and we ascend here. This is the other window. This is the chancel window. There is no actual structural division between the two. It's a lot easier not to have one. And you can see this window has one of the roof trusses straight in the middle of it, because it's easier to have these roof trusses at standard intervals. And it's just this rood beam here, as you see there. This is the west window. You see this net-like tracery, very unusual. It's another example of how this is using the language, if you will, of the Middle Ages, of Gothic, but it's not actually copying it at all. This is not a copy of a Gothic church. These columns were provided by Lord Betjeman, and you see that they have grapes on them. The Mothers' Union banner, and there is the piscina. Mothers' Union, of course, this Anglican organisation for mothers. It's still around. It's not as big as it used to be, but what is these days, frankly. Wonderful roof structure. See, the church is very largely roof. The wall comes to just above the door, and then it's the roof. There is a little side chapel, the Lady Chapel, just down here. And once again, there's nothing Gothic here. We've got instead these rather Art Deco feel to it, isn't it? That sort of head of the window, sort of thing you might expect in an Odeon picture palace. But down here into the Lady Chapel, which is very, very small and pretty. And again, you've got these little leaded windows, 3 windows here, and 4th here for the altar, because of course it is High Anglican. And here we have the Kempley WI. That's the old church. Obviously it's not this one, but more of this almost Art Deco architecture. Because I think that probably is actually the front of an old pulpit from somewhere else. And there we have the altar and the priest's stall. Everything here was made for the church, pretty much. Just 1 or 2 things are brought from elsewhere. The communion rails, very simple, because that's the ethos, that's the spirit of Art Deco. And again, that net style, what's called reticulated net style tracery, at its ultimate, literally is just these diamond panes, like a net. And there's the font. You can see how it illuminates the floor. It's just Easter Monday, so you've got the little Easter garden at the back there. One sees fewer of them in churches these days, but there we are. And there you can see the pattern the tracery makes on the floor. The door, you've got that same Art Deco type feel with that top of the door there. So very simple, very plain, whitewashed walls, and it is probably mostly roof, mostly timber, and that lovely west window. Before we properly go outside, let's pause in the porch. This is a font from somewhere else. Again, I don't think it's the old church, because the old church has a Norman font, but that Norman font may have been moved somewhere else. But that is evidently an old font. We're here in the porch. You've got this lovely bit of carving there, this Odeon-style doorway. I shouldn't call it that, but it does very much feel like Art Deco. Nothing wrong with Art Deco, to be fair. And there's one of the reliefs that Lord Betjeman wanted, and this is, of course, Mary, mother and child there. So that is the porch. Let's go outside. So outside at Kempley, it's like arts and crafts, tending towards the sort of motifs to eventually become Art Deco. We've got this nice saddleback tower that doubles as the porch, and of course the bells are held in there. and behind there is either side you've got there's vestry, there's a storage there, there's the Lady Chapel, and then right behind that there is the church itself, the single space that combines nave and chancel. So we'll have a look around, see again some of the sculpture that adorns the exterior of the building, and we see the lich gate, which is, of course, like everything else here, it is original to this. So here we are. St Edward's is, of course, a new church on a new site, which gives them a lot of freedom in terms of where to build it and what it's to look like. And there we have the window, the one and only west window, the one and only window in the nave, and you can see the openings of the tower to let the sound out and out the front. And we'll see a bit close, so go a bit closer in a minute. The relief carving of Christ in the centre here on the tower. So there he is. There is Christ with his hand raised in blessing. Blessed are the peacemakers. And that nice door doesn't look quite so Odeon from the outside. Not anything wrong with the Odeon, of course. And there's this vestry behind the Lady Chapel. And then there's effectively storage in the back here by the look of it. So round to the west end, the famous west end, and that lovely window, and we see it on the outside here. It's one of those churches where even if it wasn't open, it is generally open. You can see the inside just by going around and peering through this massive reticulated window. Reticulated is a technical term, it means net-like, or net style. So there we are. See through the window, and well, not so much right now because of the sunlight, but you just have to trust me on that. You can that if the sunlight is reflecting off it, you can see right the way through to the east end. Small graveyard here. The graveyard at the old church remained in use until very, very recently. And you can see on the south side, which would normally be the main side, because again the main entrance here is on the north side. On the south side, what we have is just this very plain buttressed wall, and on the west end it's just like the effect of that window. Just see there's the tower peering over, cross on the gable, and just to relieve this south side a little bit, we've got the window for the chancel, that window that, as we saw, has one of the roof trusses going straight through it, through the middle. It's not that this is an uncomplicated building. Although sometimes it is, it's that it's a building where simplicity has been declared to be a great virtue. So there's a tractor, agricultural vehicle going past. And instead of an east window, we have another sculpture. We have here the crucifixion on the east end. So again, so there's no east window here, just this sculpture of the crucifixion. And then there is the lich gate, which again is all, that's the whole thing. It's all of a piece, all original. And as we go near the lich gate, one of the reasons having a look at the lich gate is that the lich gate has something that many lich gates don't, but that many of them ought to. And what it has here is, you can see in the middle there is that stone pedestal, and that is where the coffin would be rested as the body is brought in. So that is St Edward's, Kempley. I've got to be a little bit careful because where the sun is today, or this time of day, it's getting towards 4:30. But on this side, what you can see there, there's the Lady Chapel and the vestry, and the church proper just behind it. So quite unusual in that as you approach it, all you can see is ancillary stuff rather than seeing the church proper itself. So there we are. That is St Edward the Confessor, Kempley. So Kempley, a cathedral to the arts and crafts movement, as John Betjeman called it. It's hard to argue with his assessment. It may not be the most famous arts and crafts building in this area, not even the most famous arts and crafts church in this area, but it is extremely lovely and, say, well worth a visit. So thank you for watching, and may God bless you and keep you until next time.